Filing Flood Claims by Scott Sutton. That's what I do. I'm a licensed public adjuster, and I am the one who mitigates insurance claims for a homeowner, not the insurance company. And that's basically, if you were on this page, you probably read about why a public adjuster is good to hire. But if you don't have a public adjuster and I'm not hired by you and you haven't called my business, Metro Public Adjustment Incorporated, then I'm going to go over some details about filing flood claims. So, things you should know about because it's really important, especially if you've been a recent flood victim of a storm. Or let's go over some details and go through some scenarios about what might be covered under flood insurance claims. You'll find out it's not your typical claim. Flood claims are not like typical homeowner claims, and that's true because they don't actually file in the same suit in the same way. I'm going to go over proof of loss. That's an important affidavit to understand. Documentation, notes and photos, structures and limits, advanced procedures. The difference between an HO and flood policy, they do differ a lot. They're not continuous and matching, kind of like it doesn't really apply because it's a flood policy where I can get the continuing and I can restore it to its pre-loss condition if it's an HO3 typical policy if you're covered for wind or rain or something of another peril. But when it comes to these other policies like flood policies, actual cash value or ACV is what you basically get paid upon. You don't get replacement costs. If I was going to get drywall paid for, a drywall that's been replaced with joint compound, that would be a finished wall. If it was an HO3 policy, I would have to look at was it painted or wallpapered before it was damaged. Things like that would be different. So there's a little bit difference in a scenario. Must have water at least in the living area, no basements, which is a primary reason why these properties have been lifted up onto another area of elevation, and there is some living area underneath it, but that's still considered a basement. If you have a made over basement, it's still considered a basement. So if a house is lifted up and you see it's been changed to a higher raised elevation, then that is the area above that's the living space, and the area below is more like a non-living space, even if it has a garage. Flood is an insurance policy meant to minimum repaired, not a pre-loss policy. NFIP stands for National Flood Insurance Policy. Now, adjusters don't have a lot of understanding about that when we meet with adjusters as public adjusters, and that's what I am. I'm a public adjuster. We run into adjusters that are more like just for floods on insurance claims. They don't actually handle the HO3 and all the other loss perils. So they're really just familiar with only that one style insurance claiming, just floods. A proof of loss, that's an important document to understand. A strict statute of 60 days on a proof of loss, unless you may check with your state's website that could have extended like North Carolina has done for Hurricane Matthew. A policyholder who disagrees with the final figures can submit their own proof of loss when signing and returning their own proof of loss. Yes, and it's important to know 60 days is a standard. You have to submit a proof of loss within 60 days. Um, you can find out more about that in my next slide. I'll tell you about how you can download the proof of loss. But yes, it's 60 days, and a lot of people don't understand how to fill that paperwork out, and that's another reason why I'm a public adjuster. I actually handle that. Important documentation prior to flood history reports. Applying for a claim is prior paid loss damage for which has already been paid for is insurance fraud. Now, in that paragraph, what I'm saying is if you had a floor paid for from a prior flood loss, you have to report it as it was reported before, and you had not restored the loss by relaying the floor again. If you report the floor as lost twice and you were already paid for, well, that's a definition of insurance fraud. Take lots of photos, include the water line, include the contents manufacturing tag and devices and the serial and model number. Don't forget the appliances. There is a download at meteorclaim.weebly.com. Navigate to the forms and download, and then you just go to this PDF file under floods, and you can get the building sheets and worksheets. This is actually from FEMA, and this will give you an outline and a guidance on where you should write down all your information for your contents, your hot water heater, your furnace or air conditioner that was damaged by the water that came in the house. Then the FEMA flood loss form is right there. These are the latest forms. They come from FEMA.gov. Detached garages. A standard insurance policy provides coverage to the building and policy. The only exception is the 10% coverage of the detached garage. So whatever your building limits are on your flood policy, 10% allowance of a maximum coverage is covered for your detached garage, but it must be used as a garage. You can't have it used in anything else. It's not normally like a garage is for automotive and storage, not being used for another living space or furniture that's usually kept in the house. It has to be something of a storage. So think storage, think automotive, things like that. Those contents would be covered. Something you would find generally in a garage. It's not a finished made over garage. Limits of available coverage. Most homeowners get a maximum level of $250,000 and $100,000 for contents. That's a standard. Even when you buy a flood insurance policy, the flood insurance policy doesn't offer more than that if you're in buying a flood for a residential. Non-residential would be your private business owners. They can have a half a million on dwelling and a half a million on contents. Same thing applies. It's basic. It's a cut to dry template in this kind of business when it comes to flood policies. If there is a mortgage on the property and it's greater than 250,000, the mortgage will carry the surplus of flood for the difference. So this is an example. If you have a shore property that's valued above $250,000, the mortgage company will carry the remaining sum that's above, that's not covered under your flood insurance policy. As I said before, it maxes out at 250,000. Contents limit. There is a contents limit on it. Artworks, photographs, collectibles, memorabilia, this kind of stuff is covered. Rare books and autographed items, anything that's personal property. And it can be personal property that you use for business if you're a self-employed contractor and you have an office inside your house where you run your office stuff before you go out to do your work at your clients' houses. Advanced procedure. After the insurance determines that the condition of the flood as defined in the standard flood insurance policy existed and the damage of the insurance property, and the insurer should offer an advance to the policyholder for the building and personal property damages up to about $5,000. It's just a cash advance to help you get started on repairs and replacement. It's not the actual coverage. This is just like a down payment from the insurance company to help you get repaired to actual cash value. If the policyholder provides photographs, a depiction of the flood damage, and documentation validating their out-of-pocket expense, such as receipts from a contractor or payments to a contractor, the insurer may get an advancement up to about $10,000. But in that area, you definitely have to have a lot of documentation, which I said earlier, which is really important. You got to have this done right. Well, I would recommend you call the number on my website or make an appointment. You don't even have to call. Just click on make an appointment, and I will have somebody who's a local representative from the local office in your state go meet with you and do a free no hassle consultation. This is to make sure you have the right coverage and we can represent you and get you paid and ensure the conditions are met and there is no underpayment by the insurance company. Well, I hope that answers a lot of questions. And again, thanks for watching.